Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Hemingway's Daughter by Christine M. Whitehead, narrated by Stephanie Einstein. 1. June 17th, 1961.
Ah, mi hija hermosa, to my beautiful daughter. Well, Flea, despite being in prison, also known as a forced hospital stay courtesy of my present wife, I've finished the book, the one for your mother. Finito. I never forgot what you said 13 years ago, that it broke her heart that I never put her in my books, wrote her out of my life, you said. Well, she's in this one, all the way. It's about us and Paris, and the way it was then. And if I live that long, at least another couple weeks, the dedication will read, "To Finley Hemingway, my daughter and my muse." You still there, Flea? Or have I bored you into oblivion already? You knew it was always you, right? Without you, do you think I could have written a page of the finest book that ever came out of this much-battered Midwestern boy's head? A single drop of red wine never would exist without you dancing across each page, hija mia. You were the engine. It's that simple. And that's the one that should have won the Noblitzer Prize. Nobel and Pulitzer together, if it existed. Should we create one? And sure, I might have had some vigor injected at times by some of the others who shall remain nameless so as not to bitch the fine mood I have going here. I know you hated them, so let's not talk about that. But the unvarnished truth is, I needed you, only you, to be proud of the old man that you were Hemingway's daughter with a capital D. Not embarrassed or ashamed. Made me try for more each time I sat down to write. One sentence, then another. Sometimes flowing, sometimes drilling. I'm calling the new one A Movable Feast, and it will make her immortal. Love can do that. I love you, kid. Forever. No way around it. See you in your dreams. Con todo mi amor siempre. Papa.
With all my love, always. That was the last letter I got from him. And while a bit garbled, it was him, like he always was. A bit of Spanish thrown in and some of his own odd phrasing. If I didn't know better, I wouldn't have guessed how ill he was. He was gone 2 weeks later. The highs and lows of living with him were over, and the loss of both was as excruciating as a finger bent to the breaking point, then twisted off to be sure you appreciated the pain the first time around. Still, without knowing it, he'd thrown me a lifeline. I now knew. Finally, after 36 years, I knew. 2. You can't get away from yourself by moving from one place to another. Ernest Hemingway, The Sun Also Rises. I had 4 Finn Hemingway family reality rules, 4 immutable truths about my family that, in one way or another, bled into every aspect of my life. Family reality rule number 1: my mother always got her way. My father's guilt about leaving my mother shortly after I was born to marry her good friend, Pauline Pfeiffer, meant he always agreed to whatever she wanted as to us kids. He might commiserate with me, but he felt he'd forfeited the right to wrangle with Mother about raising my older brother, Jack, and me. Her decisions were final, based on her occupation of the moral high ground. Consequently, despite my father being opposed to girls' boarding schools, which stressed smiling pretty to snare an accomplished husband, instead of being accomplished yourself, I was shipped to the Ellsworth School for Girls in Greenwich, Connecticut when I was 14. I'd lived happily in Chicago with my brother, my mother, and her new husband since I was 9, and was horrified at the prospect of leaving. We lived in Paris before the move to Chicago, and it was hard enough making that move. But now another move that I had no voice in? It felt unfair.
"It will be grand, Flea,"
Papa said unconvincingly in our Sunday night phone call the week before my departure.
"Your mother said they're letting you skip a grade, and the writing program is first rate. And they have a debating club. Great for a budding trial lawyer, honey. I'll be up to visit you to see how it's going."
"But I love Chicago," I said. "And it's your hometown. Your roots and family are here, Papa." I hoped to draw on some vestigial sentimental pull with this manipulative comment.
"Nice hustle, Flea," he chuckled. "But I haven't been to Chicago in over 20 years, and they didn't like me all that much when I was there, especially my family. But I'll see you in a few weeks in Connecticut, honey."
Family reality rule number 2. My father was 100% reliable 60% of the time, and that was when he was sober. I knew he would never visit me in Connecticut. He was too busy. He meant what he said as he was saying it, but between trips to Spain in support of the anti-Franco forces, his social life, and his writing, he seldom came through. When you tossed in his drinking days, his 60% reliability rating dove to 25%, and his drinking days were often. In fact, his drinking deserves a standalone rule, but I'll wrap it into this one. Family reality rule number 3. My father was a maverick force who loomed large, famous for all the right and wrong reasons, all of which got reflected onto me, and I had to live with that. Sometimes I made up a fake name to stroll through life anonymously, without associations being tagged to me, and sometimes I enjoyed being on the periphery of his fame. He was either an acclaimed literary icon or a denounced communist degenerate, depending on the audience. I just never knew what territory I was in as I waited for the guilt by association / gut punch, or the jolly arm around the shoulder with whispers of, "Wow, you've got his dark eyes. You look just like him. Do you write too?" Or, "I heard he always wanted a daughter. You must have been his favorite. So what's he really like, Flea?" They used his nickname for me like they really knew me. My father was Papa to the world, and every woman he took a liking to, even slightly, and they were legion, was called daughter by him. I resented the heck out of it. It wasn't that I wondered if he loved me. He did. But I spent much of my life wondering if I would ever be as necessary to him as he was to me. And the only way to be necessary to him was to play a part in his writing, the part of him he believed to be the only thing that justified his existence. It was all that truly mattered to him. If I didn't impact that part of him, I was his pleasant and loved, but unessential biological sidekick. Finally, Finn Hemingway's family reality rule number 4, and this is the really important one. Love always ends for us, and usually it ends badly. From my father, I learned well the lesson that love can turn on you like a black mamba, and lasting love is a mirage. Joy and bon ami with your beloved at 10 o'clock a.m. could be a mere preface to depression and drunken hostility roaring in at 6 o'clock p.m. You dote on me today, you dote on me not tomorrow. We Hemingways did not excel at blissful eternal love. We lacked the skills, and maybe the familial destiny, for forever love. I didn't want to believe this fact, but it was what I saw from the time I was a kid and watched my mother regularly dabbing red eyes and holding The Sun Also Rises open to its dedication to her and my brother. She'd swipe a tear, then smile, hoping I wouldn't see, but I saw. I saw that being left behind by someone you adored left a wound that lingered, partially exposed, forever. That was the Hemingway love doom at its most toxic. My mother, Hadley Richardson Hemingway Maurer, had remarried, but she never got over my father. Tears in the dark years after a divorce and remarriage were hardly the happy ever after I dreamed of. And as to my father and his various women and wives, well, nothing lasted. I would become fond of a new woman only to have her gone the next time I visited. The wives stayed longer, but the decline in each relationship, and each one began with epic passion, was obvious each summer and Christmas when I visited my father. There was a blaze, then a sputter, then an end. From my observation, it was far better never to have loved at all than to be left crying in the dark. Even Shakespeare got it wrong sometimes. Dragging all my reality rules with me, I headed to Ellsworth School for Girls, hoping it was the start of my route to becoming a female Clarence Darrow, as I had no interest in being Mrs. Darrow. And above all, I intended to defy and eradicate reality rule number 4, at least as to me. It was too dire to be countenanced. 3. The bulls are my best friends, I translated to Brett. You kill your friends? She asked. Always, he said in English, and laughed. So they don't kill me. Ernest Hemingway, The Sun Also Rises. September 1939. It was ironic that the least liked and most feared girl in the sophomore class at the Ellsworth School was also the most popular. Ellsworth had a quasi-feudal system with old money at the top. New money was next. Smart girls whose families could pay their way followed. This is where I fell. And at rock bottom were bright scholarship girls who worked in the kitchens and were identifiable by their gray uniforms as they ran from class to scullery. The top-tier girls came from elite private schools in Manhattan or Boston, and they were the rulers. I had a single room on the 3rd floor of an old 4-story brick building. My room was just about the same as every other room on the floor. Cream walls, wide board floors, and a small paned window. I was one of the lucky ones, though, with a working fireplace. Mother and I had arrived in a Pontiac stuffed with things I couldn't live without. As we dragged the seemingly endless boxes up the 3 flights, I dreamed of all the doors that would open to me over the next few years here. Mother made up the bed with fresh, white linens as I threw down the 2 red oriental rugs we'd hauled from Chicago. Then I tacked up photos of my Jack Russell Terrier, Harriet, my horse, Sassafras, and 2 of my father and me. After 4 hours of folding, stacking, and hanging clothes, Mother said with a break in her voice, "Shall I get on the road, Finn? Will you be all right here, darling?" I bounced a little on the bed, then stood. I didn't want her to worry. "I'll be fine. Thank you for your help, Mother. I know you have a long drive back to Chicago." Mother nodded, an uncertain look in her eyes. Then she stepped in and wrapped me in a tight, almost desperate hug. I held her hard. Then we both relaxed, a little embarrassed. She straightened and smiled. "Your horse will arrive tomorrow, Finn. Just remember, when things get rough, if they do, that you're the best of your father and me. Strong and resilient and so kind. Those things will always get you through." She paused, then held me at arm's length. She was tall, but I was already taller. She shook me a little. And yes, that fool Zelda Fitzgerald was right. You do look like your father, but in a remarkable way all your own. Ernest Hemingway was always the handsomest man I'd ever met, and those looks translate gorgeously to a young woman. I love you, Finn. My mother was rarely demonstrative, and I was touched by her unexpected and heartfelt words. Usually she was more, "Buck up. Life is like that sometimes, so stop feeling sorry for yourself." She smiled, quickly turned, skirt swirling, and was gone. I felt very alone as I glanced around my room and at the photos of home and family. Still, the next morning, I woke with a smile mortared to my face, ready to make the best of it. I flung open my dormitory door, only to find a flurry of newspaper clippings tacked to the door detailing my father's exploits. Banned in Boston, Ireland. The sun also rises and sets on Hemingway. To have or have not, we won't have it here. Burn that book. Hemingway on fire. Communism, sex, and filth? No thank you, Mr. Hemingway. I gritted my teeth. Well, isn't this a nice welcome? I was accustomed to whispers in my wake about the degenerate Hemingway, but not to in-my-face insults. I seethed as I scurried to tear down the wreckage before the other girls spied it. Guilt by association? Reality rule number 3. Gertie, a girl I'd met the day before at the barn, opened her door and stared as I finished the last of the removal. She pulled one of the articles from the trash, scanned it, then crumpled it and threw it back. She shook her head, curly brown hair swinging, and sighed. Already dressed in the school uniform of a navy skirt, white blouse, and saddle shoes, she said, "Oh, Finn, I'm so sorry. Most of the girls are nice, but one, Prill Lamont, isn't. She's a sophomore like us, and the prettiest girl in the school. She runs everything, and knows all the cutest boys at the prep schools. You can't miss her. Blonde, tiny, stuck up. She has a pack of 3 girls, and I saw her moving in yesterday. We all got the school newsletter this summer telling us who the new girls would be. You know, those stupid things." Gertie put on a voice as if reading from a wedding announcement. "Finley Hemingway, of Chicago and Cuba, daughter of Ernest Hemingway and Hadley Hemingway Maurer." Then she continued in her normal voice. "We all know who your father is. I mean, we read Time Magazine's People section. And Prill said some things." Gertie looked down. "Not nice things. Just ignore her. Last year, she picked on some scholarship girl to the point of her dropping out of school. Don't let it get to you." "I won't," I said, crossing my arms over my chest, but still chagrined that I'd made an enemy before my first breakfast here. The remaining slice of my designs for an easy first day flew skyward when the initial thing my English teacher said when I answered her question about Shakespearean tragedies was, "Finley, lose that Midwestern flat twang and French inflection as soon as possible. They do you no favors." She turned away, and the class tittered. I'd lived in Paris for the first 9 years of my life and spoke French almost before I spoke English. I did sometimes, when nervous, say words with a French accent or phrasing. I flushed and looked down. A girl in the front row with white blonde hair and a gorgeous face turned around. "Or maybe you can speak Spanish for us if your English isn't good enough, Señorita Hemingway. But no Spanish obscenities, please, given your family history and all." The teacher cut in. "I don't recall inviting you to comment, Miss Lamont." The girl turned away with a smirk. Prill Lamont. Old money girl meets pays her way girl. I didn't complain about the dead mouse in my bed, the short sheeting, or the peanut butter in my riding boot. I had 3 brothers and was used to much worse. Prill's next attack, though, was painful. I was at the barn putting away my horse, Sassafras, when Prill and Joni Jansen, one of Prill's group, strolled down the aisle. Joni's horse was next to mine, and Prill, as usual, was braying about her weekend. God, Joni, you would love Danny Delano. He's the president's nephew, or cousin or something. Next time come with us. Nick couldn't make it, but we had a terrific time. Joni moaned. I miss everything good. My parents won't let me go off campus ever. I took a breath. So far, I hadn't found a good friend at Ellsworth. Although Gertie was lovely, she'd made her friends her first year, and the position of confidant was definitely taken by Helen Vanderson. But Joni Jansen loved her horse like I loved Sassafras. Maybe Joni wasn't that bad. As both girls leaned against Birthday Boy's stall door, laughing and whispering, I stuck my hands deep into my jacket pockets and decided to take a chance. I stepped into the aisle and smiled broadly. Hey, Prill, Joni, I said. Great day for writing, right? I wondered if you'd like to listen to some records in my room tonight. I just got Glenn Miller's Moonlight Serenade. Prill frowned like a bad smell had wafted by. She then flipped her hair over her shoulder, eyed me up and down, and said in a voice that could be heard in Vermont, Wow, you really are freakishly tall, Finn. Not much chance of getting a boyfriend, being so gigantic. She tilted her head and pointed. And it seems, unfortunately, you ended up with a boy's nose and brows by mistake. Tragic when that happens. She shook her head 3 quick shakes, as if it were all too incredible, before turning away, laughing. Come on, let's go, Joni. Joni looked like she might cry, but then spun and followed Prill out of the barn. I reddened and looked around to see how many of the girls heard. Most had resumed their chores, but one girl I didn't know yet said from across the aisle, She's mean. Ignore her, Finn. I will. Thanks, I said more nonchalantly than I felt, as I fumbled with Sassafras's halter, then quietly shut his stall door. 4. I don't know. There isn't always an explanation for everything. Ernest Hemingway, The Sun Also Rises. Prill's words were not a surprise. I'd known since I was 8 that I wasn't pretty, when no less a beauty than Zelda Fitzgerald, a longtime family friend, told me so. The look of the day was petite, pert nose, and thin, penciled brows, like Claudette Colbert or Jean Arthur. I was far from that ideal. Mother, my brother Jack, and I were still living in Paris at the time Zelda made her pronouncement. On that spring afternoon, as I sat cross-legged on the red Harris rug, dressing a doll, Zelda was perched on the couch behind me in a shiny green flapper dress, slim legs crossed at the knee. She took a drag of her cigarette, sucking in the air hard. When I held up my doll for her to see, she stared off as the tip of her cigarette glowed, then faltered. She twisted and blew a perfect smoke ring over her right shoulder. Suddenly, as quick as a king cobra, her hand shot out. Sharp fingers locked into my bony shoulder hollow and jerked me up. Surprised, I regarded her with my dark eyes, and she gazed back with her own hard blue ones. With my chin in her hand, she said to her husband Scott, as if I weren't there, "What a shame she takes so strongly after Ernest. Yes, the red hair is Hadley's, and it's lovely, but her jaw is too strong, her nose too straight, her brows too heavy, and her gaze too direct with those, oh, Hemingway eyes. No fineness. Too tall, not pretty. She'll never inspire poetry." She said it with disgust, dropped her hand from my face, and turned away. Pity. My mother's mouth opened, then shut, shocked into speechlessness. I blinked, eyes burning, as I still stood facing Zelda, unable to move. Scott, always kind, reached over and touched my arm. He looked beautiful and golden in his three-piece suit. He said quickly,
"Don't mind her, Finn. She's a tease. You're lovely, sweetheart."
Then he added in a voice with some menace,
"Zelda, you are such a joker. But remember, dear, children don't always see the humor."
She looked at him and sniffed. She was the only person I knew with no verbal filter. She was also the only woman I knew who was not only not attracted to my father, but who truly hated him. The feeling was mutual. After Prill's insult at the barn, I felt the same torrent of despair that swamped me the day Zelda pronounced me fatally lacking. No fineness. Will never inspire poetry. When I got back to my room, I stared out the window for a few minutes as the sky darkened. I was bewildered by Prill's clearly intentional cruelty and wondered how she could so dislike someone she didn't know. I wanted badly to be the girl who didn't care what anyone said, but I also wanted friends to laugh with, like I had in Chicago. I wanted to be a lawyer to find fairness for others, but didn't yet know how to push back at unfairness aimed at me. I glanced at the calendar and desperately wanted to go home. I wanted to see my wild but loyal little dog, and to sit on the banks of Lake Michigan laughing with my best friend Susan, and teasing my brother as we all ate Chicago pizza around the kitchen table. Only the thought of being with my father at Christmas in 2 months made being here feel even close to tolerable. With him, everything was fun, even making a routine breakfast. He'd say,
"Flea, you cover the right flank with those 3 eggs, and don't let your brothers get near that slab of bread or the leche, milk, over there. Old Cat is going behind enemy lines with life-saving intelligence for our boys in the trenches."
One of his many cats would sit calmly blinking and looking noble. Then there were all of his friends. On any given evening, Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall might be mixing martinis on the back patio, while Gary Cooper, Papa, and Ava Gardner manned the grill as Marlene Dietrich critiqued their technique from the sidelines.
"Papa, mein Bärchen, that one is underdone. And Eva, mein Liebling, enough flipping."
It was like having the preeminent seat at an improvisational theater of the absurd. It wasn't their fame that was so alluring, although it was, but their familiarity with my father, the inside jokes. And when I was with him, I was inside the circle. They'd smoke, drink, laugh, name drop, pound the table, and tell wild stories as I sat on the floor laughing along with them. When I held up Papa's beloved, small, good-natured mongrel, Negrita, and danced around with her to big band music, waving her paw energetically at them, they hooted and clapped like it was hilarious. They laughed not because it was that cute, but because they liked me, and because I was Hemingway's daughter, and because we were all enjoying the thick Cuban night air and the pleasure of being alive here together. When I had to go back home at the end of each summer, it was like going from Technicolor to gray. He was that good. I stared at my calendar again. Prill had hit my greatest vulnerabilities in a grand, lucky, exploding bullseye. Actually, she'd hit all the family rules that made my situation inescapable. Rule number 1, my mother wanted me here, and she always won, so I was stuck with no choices. Rule number 2, my father couldn't give me a reprieve because he was inconsistent, and see rule number 1. Rule number 3, Prill unearthed the baggage that came with being a Hemingway and blew it up as big as she could in this tiny fiefdom. I was the daughter of a libertine whose books were banned routinely and who was declared by some to be a communist writer of deviant themes. And rule number 4? While Prill harped on my looks, what I heard above all else was, You are cursed, and all of your family is cursed, giant.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?